Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to all councillors and municipal staff in attendance in the quorum room this morning. Welcome to those guests in the gallery. Welcome to those watching live proceedings on our Zoom platform and those who will watch the recording later on our YouTube channel. We'll call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for May 5th, 2026. It is 1:31 p.m. Today is Red Dress Day, a national day of awareness and action to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited peoples. Earlier today, many of us attended a ceremony on Patricia Street, where multiple red dresses are now on display marking the day. Matricia Bauer drummed, sang, and spoke very eloquently and emotionally and from a very personal perspective as an Indigenous woman. At the conclusion of her remarks, she invited councillors in attendance to speak if they wish to do so. And from my perspective, in an unprompted, spontaneous show of respect, all councillors present chose to show their support and solidarity silently by listening, learning, and humbly acknowledging the deeper knowledge and perspective of those more directly impacted by the violence so disproportionately visited upon Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited people. So I want to take this opportunity to thank those members of the community who organized and implemented the ceremony this morning to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited people, and those members of the public who will take time to reflect as they make their trip down Patricia Street today, particularly the 500 and 600 blocks of Patricia Street, and see those red dresses, and hopefully they will reflect on one of the more terrible aspects of the impacts of colonization on Indigenous people. With that said, and because it is highly appropriate to do so on this occasion, I begin by acknowledging that the municipality of Jasper is on Treaty 6 and 8 territories, as well as the Jasper House Métis District. This land is the traditional territory, meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route, and home for the Dainza, Assiniwatchee Winawak, Assiniwatchee Niha, Nihayawak, Anishinaabe, Secwepemc, Stoney Nakoda, Mountain Métis, and Métis. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Seeing none, I would look for a motion that Council approve the agenda for today's meeting as presented. Councillor Melnick, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And before I proceed with agenda item 3, it occurs to me that I should earlier have introduced Councillor Conscroot as Deputy Mayor, effective May 1st and continuing through to the end of June. So thank you, Councillor Conscroot, for occupying that chair for the next 2 months, and my thanks as well to Councillor Frechette for his duties over the past 2 months. That takes us to agenda item 3, approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes for approval, beginning with the regular meeting minutes of April 21st, 2026. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing none, I would look for a motion to approve the minutes of April 21st, 2026 as presented. Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We also have before us the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of April 28th, 2026. Are there any errors or omissions, corrections required to be made to those minutes? And again, if not, I would look for a motion to approve the minutes of April 28, 2026, Committee of the Whole as presented. Thank you, Councillor Hall. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, delegations. There are no delegations listed on our agenda, but this is the time on our agenda where we always invite members of the public who are present in the quorum room to present to council on any item on the agenda. We have one resident in the room who indicated that he wishes to speak to council, and I am prepared to say that we could sandwich his concern under agenda item 6.1, Jasper Recovery Coordination Center progress update. So welcome, and although we know you, we will ask that you identify yourself for the record.
Charlie Finley, local resident. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to speak.
Please have a seat.
I'm okay. I'm going to do this part for the regular agenda. Here we go. I'm going to try to keep this as quick and short as possible. I was just checking into height lines. And as you know from my letter with regards to our lovely new wire poles, electrical poles at 50 feet, I do believe that's still being worked on, and I'm kind of getting some good feelings that we might put them in the ground. But we'll see. That contract's up in 2028, so we could ask for it at that point in time if that was the consensus feeling on the wires. The next one, I just got a hold of the parameters. And you guys read this stuff, but you really don't have any authority over it. It went to the superintendent and he signed off on it. But it states that a building can be 16.7 meters, a commercial building, I believe it's 3CD or whatever the classification is, out of the four-corner average grade. 16.7 meters is 58 feet. I thought we learned from Banff. You can't see mountains through 58-foot buildings. You can through 2- and 3-story buildings. But I just got told by the individual that works for Evergreen here that they're after 4 or 5 stories, which is pushing on the 58 feet. It's the only building on that street, that'd be Geeky Street, that will be of that dimension. It's in the middle of town. It's going to block a lot of people's view. Yes, I'm biased. It's going to block mine. But it's also, those parameters are a little excessive. I understood why you wish to go there, because increased living space is increased tax base. Beautiful thing, because we're going to need it to fix the sewers and the water and everything else that we're putting higher demands on. But Evergreen does not pay taxes. And my first Evergreen bill when I bought that house in 83 was $5. The last one I saw before I burned was $6.50. I'm paying for a 58-foot high building and they don't pay taxes. I have problems with that. I'm financing something that I don't want to see. So that's all I wish to say to you, and for you to allow the deliberation on it. They may not go to 4 or 5 stories. I don't know. It won't know until it gets submitted for development. They stick at 3, beautiful. Love it. That's what was, well, it was 2 before with the roof pitch. But if the idea is to get more density for income on taxes, that one's a lost cause. And you're up in the sewers, the water use, everything on that corner by doubling basically the size of the amount of individuals living there. Thank you. Any questions I'd gladly take? I have to sign my name.
Thank you, Mr. Finley. I will turn to councillors if they have any questions and acknowledge that there is not a matter specifically on our agenda, but I exercise some discretion to fit it under the Recovery Coordination Center progress update, and we will be getting a report later. I'm not sure whether anyone can speak to that specific matter. Councillor Waxer.
Please correct me if I'm incorrect, but I believe that the Pine Grove Manor building we're talking about is going to be built by the province and managed by Evergreen, so it would not come out of the Evergreen requisition.
Good point. If you're saying I'm not paying for it, but I pay provincial taxes, but sure.
If, and again, I may be incorrect, but I believe that while higher orders of government do not pay municipal taxes, there is an agreement in place with grants in lieu of taxes, and that I believe that the provincial government, by the time that will be built, will be paying 100% of a grant in lieu of taxes. And I still understand your concern around the height, but I just wanted to put your mind at ease on some of those other points.
Thank you. And are you the president representative on the Evergreen, Kathleen?
I am.
Thank you for that information. It's appreciated. One way or another, we're paying. But in the end, we want to do it right. Like, I don't know. I really like this new building that town's putting up. Looks good, right? So I know our town's never going to be what it was before. And I understand the expansion to try to get more tax base to accomplish more things for the whole. Wonderful thing to do. But if there isn't taxes coming in yearly to plumb that and etc., then we're footing the bill and maybe not getting what we want. Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions with regard?
I will look to council for that. I don't see hands. I just wanted to comment, and not a question for you, Mr. Finley. Certainly from my perspective, increased building envelopes have potentially an impact on taxes, but were not designed with tax revenue in mind. What we are interested in doing is providing more living units in this town. We had a deficit of over 600 living units at the previous to the fire. We lost 820, I think. We need more places for more people to live, and that includes seniors. And so, yes, bigger buildings may generate additional taxes, but that is not the purpose of
expanding
of densification. The purpose of densification is to accommodate people with living units who need them.
The clarification is accepted, and I actually see probably an overabundance for a short period of time here in housing. But once again, because our defined parameters are what they are, we will be back here going, we're short houses. In what timeline I couldn't manage to guess, but it's always been an issue here. And thank you, though, for the years. And sorry to take any time out of the real stuff that's going on, but it's worth considering because it's all going to be hard on the infrastructure. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Finley. That takes us to agenda item 5, correspondence. Back in March, as you know, I wrote to Minister of Finance, Minister Horner, who is also president of the Treasury Board at the direction of Council, requesting government assistance in either having insurers grant extensions of the upcoming limitation date to insured people who lost property in the Jasper wildfire, and including requesting government assistance, if necessary, in the form of legislative change to grant assistance to residents of our community. The response has been received. I've had it included in our correspondence for the information of council, but also for the information of the community, just so that they're kept abreast of developments. The letter speaks for itself, perhaps not unexpected, but not quite what we had hoped for either. So I leave that for the consideration of council. Is there any discussion with respect to that correspondence? Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Arlen. I've talked about it with a few people, but I think we should be sending a letter to every resident that owned a property as of the date of the fire, explaining what to do and how to get an extension and what an extension looks like. And I started the process by sending a draft to Mr. Ireland just to have a look at. And I'm not prepared to make a motion at this point, but I think that there's going to be somebody out there that if we don't do this, we'll get missed. And I think it's an important thing to do. I don't see how it creates any liability on us just to send a letter out suggesting how to proceed. And I'm prepared maybe in a week or two to make a motion once the letter is perhaps in a more final format. But I don't think that we should just be drifting along here and letting people look at the website, because I've talked to many people in town that don't seem to understand how it works. I mean, people don't understand that if they're halfway through the process of building, that they're still not home free. You know, they could get cut off as of the 22nd or 24th of July this year. So I think that's something that we should be doing.
Thank you, Councillor Roger. Any other comments about the correspondence? I would look to council as to whether or not you would wish me to respond to the letter from the minister. He rightly points out that he alone cannot change the legislation, but the intent was never that he should or could, but that government can, although I don't know when the current session of the legislature will end, and so it may be impossible now to get legislation in place. Prior to July, my understanding from the events of the Fort McMurray wildfire was that as the 2-year limitation approached, the relevant minister of the day informed insurers and IBC that the government was contemplating legislative change if insurers did not respond with extensions. In the current circumstances, I know that there are many insurers who have granted extensions, but I cannot say that all of them have. And I agree with Councillor Roger, as that date approaches, there is certainly potential that one or more of our residents will miss the requirement, and that could have profoundly negative consequences for those individuals. If there is nothing further, I'm prepared to move on our agenda, but if there is further discussion now, that is fine. Further direction for me, I'm happy to take it. And otherwise, it sounds like Councillor Roger may raise this again, either by way of notice or motion or otherwise at a subsequent meeting. Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I just wanted to make the comment that while I completely agree with Councillor Roger that we send a letter, but I think also responding to the minister would be valuable, because we will likely see other communities face this kind of situation. And in these mass disasters, the 2-year time limitation is probably impossible for most people to complete the process. And I think that in these times, we should be encouraging the government of Alberta to review the 2-year time limitation, because I understand that that is set by the provincial government. So of each province has a different limitation. So I think it is worthwhile responding, not if it even if it doesn't benefit the community of Jasper, it may benefit another community in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Anything further? All right, hearing none, I would look for a motion to receive the correspondence for information. Councillor Roger, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6, new business, and we begin with 6.1, Jasper Recovery Coordination Center progress update, and welcome Director of Recovery, Mr. Olthoff.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. Council, as usual, our monthly JRCC progress update. I'll begin just in a moment when we have the slides up on the display. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so proceeding through our usual order of various priority areas in recovery, and beginning with debris removal. Debris removal as an area of work in recovery is very nearly complete, with all of the physical debris in the town site now removed. As you can see on the slide, the total number of demolition permits issued by Parks Canada was 393. 374 of those have now received certificates of completion, with 3 in the review process and 17 properties still awaiting submission of their confirmatory sampling reports. As you can see by this graph, that number 0, indicating, as I said, that all of the debris remaining in the town site has been removed, and by far the large majority of properties have now received certificates of completion, indicating that the leaseholds are now safe for human health and habitation. Moving on to the rebuilding of homes and businesses. Quite a lot to report this week. Parks Canada has recently launched an auto permitting system for low-risk in-town residential development permit applications, so a sort of auto permitting process. At present, or as of the time of this report's writing, 13 permits were issued by this system in the first week. An updated rebuild guide has also been released for the 2026 construction season. It provides step-by-step guidance, tips, consolidated information, and support for residents and industry professionals. In April, the JRCC hosted 3 rebuild and recovery support sessions, 2 here in Jasper and 1 in Hinton, which was very much appreciated by displaced Jasperites living in Hinton. We can report that 22 properties in town have now been provided with occupancy permits, which is fantastic. That includes the first property in the Cabin Creek neighborhood. And 3 of those properties were supported by the Housing Accelerator Fund accessory dwelling unit incentive grant program. I can report also that the Marmot Pit has opened to receive clean fill for dumping as of this week. which has been an issue of concern for some contractors as they have been excavating basements and looking for places to dispose of clean fill. And that Parks Canada has provided data to the Provincial Apartment Vacancy Rental Cost Survey. So we will be receiving updated, and actually at this time have, I'm conflating two issues there, that Parks Canada has provided that information for the Apartment Vacancy and Rental Cost Survey, which will be forthcoming. Again, looking to the usual chart that we show progress in rebuild, we can see 151 properties remain to enter into the rebuild process through submitting applications for building and development and building permits. But as we progress along, more and more, the green bar on the right indicating occupancy permits is growing, and we see more and more properties moving into the rebuild process. And that is demonstrated even more in this series of graphs, which again, the pertinent piece of information there is that the purple bar is shrinking, meaning more and more properties are moving into the rebuild process, and the green bar grows as more and more occupancy permits are granted. We're expecting that green bar to grow substantially in the coming weeks and months as a significant number of properties are very close to that occupancy permit stage in their development. Of 312 dwelling units that are included in existing building permits, 87 represent net new units. That represents progress towards the objective of densification and the increasing number of dwelling units in the community. And if we look at the number of dwelling units represented by those 22 occupancy permits, there are 25 dwelling units within those 22 permits. On interim housing, the interim housing program is now fully installed and fully occupied or allocated. So we have completed the installation of the additional interim housing sites in the town site, and all of those sites, as well as the Marmot Meadows sites, are fully allocated with move-ins continuing. And it should be noted that occupancy is a continually changing thing in any residential program, but certainly in the interim housing program. So there are ongoing move-outs and move-ins, but for all intents and purposes, the program is currently full. We have offered reservations to 8 Jasper businesses for staff housing purposes. This was a program that allowed businesses to reserve spots in the dorm program at Marmot Meadows that they could attach to job offers, which allowed those businesses to make offers of employment that come with housing, which is, as everyone knows, is a common component of the seasonal employment picture in Jasper. There will be ongoing landscaping and tree planting activities throughout the summer on in-town interim housing sites. The long-term resident camping program at Whistler's Wabasso will continue through the summer and is being managed by Parks Canada. And as I noted previously, the GOA has confirmed that Jasper will be included in the Apartment Vacancy and Rental Cost Survey this year. It's notable that when establishing the pricing, the rental cost pricing for the interim housing program, we made reference to the 2023 Government of Alberta Apartment Vacancy and Rental Cost Survey, situating the pricing for interim housing within the range that was identified in that survey. And this year's survey will be the newest update, or the only update since that 2023 survey was done. On the social recovery front, we have now had 113 Jasperites complete the training for the Pathfinders programming, and the Pathfinders program does continue through the spring. We're expecting more graduates in the coming weeks and months. Community social circles, spiritual circles continues as well with online offerings for displaced Jasperites. And to speak to the earlier item on the agenda, the JRCC is continuing to communicate through usual municipal channels regarding the 2-year statutory limit on insurance claims, and we have referred several residents to the Red Cross for assistance with navigating that process. Initially, we had scheduled to provide a social recovery deep dive this week and present results of a needs assessment. Due to some staffing shortages in the JRCC, we have reordered those deep dive updates. So this week we will be providing a deep dive on economic recovery, and we'll reschedule the social recovery deep dive to next month. So turning to that deep dive on economic recovery. To review the priorities in economic recovery within the community, the priority is to support a stable and resilient economy that is driven by businesses that contribute to the community's unique character provide offerings for both residents and visitors, and plays a vital role in Alberta and Canada's visitor economy. In the park, the priority is to offer and promote exceptional experiences in all seasons for visitors to explore the changing landscape and meaningfully connect with the culture and natural heritage of Jasper National Park. So since we last provided an in-depth review of progress against economic recovery priorities, this is essentially what has progressed. The JRCC has concluded a physically fire-impacted business health assessment, a survey of businesses whose commercial areas were affected by the fire. I'll have more on that in a moment. And the Commerce Continuity Initiative has continued with the interim industrial park being fully operational. The 2026 pop-up village, the commercial pop-up village, making a call for additional participants and beginning operations, with activation activities planned throughout the summer for the commercial pop-up village, and for a focus on business continuity, placemaking, and site activation. The economic recovery team has worked with the housing team on summer staff housing support, and the economic recovery working group has wound down. And I'll just take a minute to talk about that. The economic recovery working group was established early on in the recovery operation in fall of 2024 and worked collaboratively on several initiatives. In recent months, its members found that the scope of collaborative work had essentially been concluded, and the group was functioning more as an information sharing forum, and took the decision to wind that down as there were other opportunities and other forums for that information sharing. That doesn't imply that collaboration amongst those parties to support economic recovery is finished. It's just simply that scope of work under the economic recovery working group is now concluded. Looking a bit more at the health assessment of physically fire-affected businesses, the survey was undertaken by JRCC staff and connected with 100 fire-impacted businesses, received responses from 38% of those, of which 75% were businesses operating in commercial spaces and 25% were home-based businesses. And this does exclude home-based accommodation businesses. So there's other types of businesses operating from residential spaces. Those businesses surveyed indicated that about 38% were relocated and operating within Jasper. About 26% were in a moment of pause and still assessing future options. 12% had relocated outside of Jasper, and about 9% had permanently closed. The business sectors was representing a full array of businesses in Jasper, of course, many being in the tourism services industry, but also construction, professional and business services, health and wellness. So a fairly representative sample of the various business types in Jasper. Some of the key findings of that survey was that recovery is progressing, but stability for many fire-affected businesses has not yet been achieved. And this is no surprise, as we're expecting there to be a prolonged period of recovery and stabilization for fire-affected businesses. And also finding that recovery is shifted into a more complex stabilization and viability phase, which is consistent with what we're seeing in recovery generally, which is that more and more the challenges being faced in the community by residents, by businesses, are quite specific in nature, quite idiosyncratic, and requiring specific case-managed supports. One of the biggest, and perhaps the biggest, system-wide barrier faced by businesses are challenges around insurance. And businesses are reporting that the prolonged transition to stability is creating an equally prolonged risk of business loss and closure. Immediate outcomes of this survey is that businesses that connected with the survey were provided with information about resources and supports specific to the challenges they were facing, that our team will be using this input to inform advocacy and the development of additional supports. And throughout this process, a sort of stronger collaboration has emerged between the JRCC, the Chamber of Commerce, and Community Futures West Yellowhead in aligning to address the specific concerns of businesses that have been communicated with. Turning to the Pop-Up Business Village, the 2026 season for the Commercial Pop-Up Village is now underway and begins this month. It says here 3, but we can now report 4 businesses that are signed up to participate this season, and a call out is there for other eligible businesses to participate. There are a number of placemaking and site activation activities planned for this summer. So a contractor has been contracted using funds from the Prairie Scan contribution agreement that supports this program to do placemaking work and improve the sort of attractiveness of the site and draw in visitors. There are a number of seasonal programs and events planned through the summer to again attract visitors and activity around the pop-up village. And we are very happy to report that the first participating business that was part of the pop-up village last summer is now moving into a permanent location in a rebuilt building. So a success story for them. They were able to keep operating and transition back into a permanent space. The interim industrial park is fully open and fully operational. I report that one tenant has invested quite considerably in additional structures on the site to increase their overall operational capacity. And if you haven't seen it yet, I think very worth having a look over there, as the Recovery in Color component of the ongoing Uplift Mural Festival has taken place in the Industrial Interim Park, which included mural paintings on 12 municipally owned sea cans and 1 lavatory trailer. Really quite a special thing to see, so I would highly recommend anyone go and visit that. There is a request for proposals out presently connected with the Commerce Continuity Initiative to conduct some marketing activity to direct visitors to local businesses and support business recovery. This RFP went out in April and will conclude soon, with the expectation that marketing activities will begin in June. And this marketing is specifically targeted to people with plans, people who are in the region or who have plans to visit Jasper, to direct them to local businesses and have them play a role in supporting the recovery of those businesses affected by the wildfire, which, truthfully speaking, is all businesses in Jasper. From Parks Canada's perspective, supporting economic recovery includes that 75% of front country and 100% of backcountry campsites will be open again this year. I can report that number actually maybe have gone up a little bit recently, as Parks Canada recently announced that 80 additional campsites have been added since last year through hazard tree removal in the Wapiti and Whistler's campgrounds. The Valley of the Five Lakes Trail will be opening later this month, and there are plans also for the Wabasso Lake Trail and the Curator Trail to be opening in summer 2026. Those are some marquee attractions in the park. And regional and national campaigns are supporting the return of visitors, and importantly, this includes the Canada Strong Pass program, which allows free entry to the park for Canadians, which begins in June. As I'd mentioned in the interim housing section of this report, the interim housing program is also supporting local businesses by offering reservations for some businesses to attach housing to job offers. We can also report that 53% of the 764 residents housed in the interim housing program are employed by Jasper-based small and medium businesses. 23% are employed by larger businesses in Jasper. So the interim housing program significantly supports business recovery in Jasper by housing a large number of people employed by Jasper businesses. In fact, the interim housing program houses staff members of 110 unique Jasper businesses. Again, in conjunction with the long-term residential camping program offered by Parks Canada, businesses will be offered reservation options in campsites for the summer season as well, with 51 campsites set aside to provide long-term camping for both residents and seasonal staff. A bit of a more focused update on rebuild progress for commercial properties. As you can see, 19 of the, 31 commercial properties in the rebuild phase are still in the early stages prior to submitting development and building permits. So that's about 46% of those commercial properties have yet to really enter into the rebuild phase. But many of those are supporting recovery in other ways, importantly hosting the interim industrial park space, operating through temporary spaces like the pop-up village, and accommodating work camps in the S Block region of town. Areas of focus, ongoing focus for economic recovery include continuing business retention activities, advancing interim housing options for the workforce, expanding Indigenous partnerships in various ways through contracting, procurement, business licensing, and other opportunities, and sustaining momentum of business recovery while addressing ongoing challenges for business, recognizing that there is still a long road ahead for economic recovery. And the JRCC will continue working in this space and reporting back to Council on it. That concludes the report for today. I will gladly take any questions and will point out that Director Sanders, as well behind me, can take any questions with respect to rebuild. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Olthoff. Thanks for the report and the deep dive. Questions from councillors? Deputy Mayor Consgrud.
Thank you, Mayor Island, through you to Director Olthoff. Just the numbers there, 53% of the interim houses is like housing small business and 23% larger business. Could you tell me what the other 24% is housing?
Certainly, through you, Mayor Ireland, to Deputy Mayor Consgrud. That would include, for example, municipal employees, Parks Canada employees, employees of Alberta Health Services, other non-public sector employees, things of that nature.
Great, thanks.
Other questions? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. And I just wanted to speak to something on the social recovery side of things. So it's been about 22 months since our fire, and in that time we've lost 7 young people connected to our community, which is a lot for a small town to carry. Well, we do have supports, and I want to acknowledge the people on the ground that are working really hard. When a whole community goes through something traumatic, even people who are usually okay can start to struggle, and that's when those who are already vulnerable, I think, can slip through the cracks. And I've had a few conversations in the last week with teachers, and it's clear they're feeling this too. They're supporting students through some really heavy things while carrying it themselves. And I just wonder if it's an opportunity or would make sense to ask the province for more supports in the mental health support area or social supports.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Ireland, to Councillor Hall. I think that's an excellent point, and thank you for raising that. It has been a very tragic and challenging thing for the community to lose so many young people connected to the community since the fire. The Social Recovery Working Group includes participation from representatives of Recovery Alberta and in the provincial government, and we speak with them on a regular basis about ongoing trends and emerging needs in the community with respect to psychosocial well-being. This is an area of concern for all parties, and I can take that back and again reemphasize that with our partners in Recovery Alberta and with all partners, the Red Cross, our own Community Outreach Services team, the Pathfinders participants, that there is a particular and an urgent need for support at this time. So I appreciate you bringing that forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am looking for other hands, in the absence of which I have some questions related to the apartment vacancy and rental cost survey. And I'm just unclear, particularly about the rental cost survey. So Parks Canada is conveying information to the province, and this will have some downstream effects. Did you say that it includes rental costs for interim housing? Because it seems to me that would entirely skew what our market looks like. And that then changes, say, things for affordability and who qualifies for assistance. And I'm unclear what information is going to get passed along and whether sort of social housing through interim housing is going to impact survey results potentially in an unwanted manner.
Thank you for the question, Mayor Ireland. I'll first clarify my comment, which may have been somewhat misleading. What I'd meant to convey was that when putting together the pricing structure for the interim housing program, we made reference to the 2023 rental cost survey from the province of Alberta. So we situated the pricing for interim housing at the low end of the spectrum that was reported in that survey, trying to establish a price that fit within the context of the prevailing market, but recognized the condition of that housing, that it was not an ideal form of housing. So I didn't mean to imply that that was a specific input into the current survey, but I think your question is quite a good one, and also something to be followed up with the province, because you're quite right. If interim housing is included in that survey, it will, because of the scale of the program and the fact that it is set at a lower price range, influence to some extent the range and the averages that are reported in that survey. So certainly something we can follow up on. I think there's also two issues to be sort of parsed there. One is the rental cost survey, and the other is the cost of living estimate that establishes the minimum or maximum income threshold for subsidized housing, in particular the MPL Place housing. While I don't know that those are entirely separate, they are reported separately. So that updated income threshold has already been released for this year, while the rental cost survey is ongoing. So I think to that extent, any information gathered through the rental cost survey won't have an impact, at least immediately, on that income threshold figure as it relates to cost-controlled housing.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And I've also had no opportunity really to think this through. I don't know where it goes, but it seems like it could be impactful and potentially in a negative way. But appreciate your response. And CAO Given wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor Ireland, just for council's comfort on this point, I can confirm that the rental cost survey is explicitly focused on market rental units. And so it only includes non-subsidized rental buildings containing 4 or more market rental units. So I think interim housing is explicitly non-market, and so wouldn't be included, would be my belief based on sort of the scope of what the survey is and how it's described. We can confirm that just to be 100% certain. But my experience from previous years is that the province essentially does a call out. They always start with the municipality, even though we didn't have any information on development and owners, because we're not currently in that business. But they look to get in touch with the owners of market rate multi-unit residential buildings and find out what they charge. So that's been the process in the past. I think we connected them with Parks Canada because they're best positioned to be able to provide that kind of contact information. But again, just to your point that you raised, the interim accommodation, interim housing is non-market, and so by virtue of that wouldn't be included in the report. Or I should say should not be included in the report. We can check to see if it was.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for Director Olthoff? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Director Olthoff. I see that 3 of the first homes in Cabin Creek, 3 of these were supported by the housing, the fund, the HAV, and the Additional Dwelling Unit Incentive Grant Program. In the grant program, I'm trying to recall, was there any requirement or limit on what rent could be charged? Or will that eventually, through the rental cost survey and apartment vacancy, I guess those market rents will be set based on what the market will support?
On this question, I will gladly defer to my colleague, Director Sanders.
Through you, Mayor Ireland, to Councillor Melnick. Quick clarification, the 3 ADUs that now have occupancy are throughout town or throughout the wildfire impacted area. And to your question about rental rates, the owners of those units will establish the rate.
Thank you.
While you are gracing us with your presence, Director Sanders. Can you offer any sort of response to the query we got from the member of the public who appeared as a delegation?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Your Worship. First, to confirm the comment that you made, Mayor Ireland, about the purpose of the changes really ultimately is to increase the housing supply. In Jasper, you cited numbers about the shortage of housing that we had pre-fire, and our desire as an administration, and with many of the choices that you've made since, has been to, while we rebuild, increase the number of units that are available. And we can see with some of the numbers that Director Oldhoff presented, that's taking shape with folks that have permits so far. What I would like to add is, in terms of new units, it's really important to notice that the costs, the infrastructure costs that come with new units, is going to be offset by the offsite levies bylaw that you recently adopted. So the purpose of that bylaw was also to ensure that we minimize any taxpayer impact for net new units. So if a property had one home on it and now it has 6 homes on it, there will be an assessed levy for those five additional dwelling units. So that was an important piece of legislation that you adopted recently. To the specifics about height for the location where Pine Grove was standing, the R3B zoning a year ago, yes, just over a year ago, was expected to be 3 stories. And the ridge line height, so the height at the top of the peak of a building, was expected to be 13.7 meters or 14.9 feet. Council recommended to the field unit superintendent, who did adopt a possibility for a 4th story. And the height for that would be a maximum of 16.7 meters or 54.79 feet. So there is an increase of 1 story that is allowed there. That's what the zoning for the land allows. What a developer, whoever it is, chooses to do is up to them. But the maximum would be 4 stories and that ridge line height at 16.7 meters or just under 55 feet.
Thank you for that. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate Director Sanders being at the table. We are talking right now about the rebuild of dwellings that were lost in the fire. We have a couple of other developments that are going on right now, apartment buildings that were not lost in the fire. Those numbers aren't reflected on page 19, are they? For example, there's an apartment building that's in process right now. There's another one that broke ground. And I believe our municipal housing corporation dwelling units are not in the information being presented.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Melnick, that is correct. The numbers in the JRCC report are specific to the properties that were impacted by the fire.
Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to the director. The current, you said, is 54 feet. Before that, I think you said 14 feet by mistake. What was the old height restriction?
Thank you, Mayor Worship, to Councillor Roger. Almost 14, it was 44.9.
So the idea that Mr. Finley had that there would be 5 stories, that's not allowed in town. Four is the maximum.
Yes, 4 is the maximum right now, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for either of the directors present before us now? If not, I am going to thank Director Olthoff again for his report and Director Sanders for providing answers to other questions, and invite a councillor for a motion to receive the report for information. Councillor Waxer. Thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you both. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, the director's report from the Director of Finance and Administration, Director Malinchuk.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. I'll just give you a brief summary of the report in front of you. We have successfully rolled out the IT knowledge base and resource hub to support staff. Security training has been updated and expanded to include all users, and we have begun delivering in-person Microsoft 365 training sessions. We are nearing completion on Windows 10 upgrades with only a few devices remaining, and work is ongoing with the senior leadership team to develop IT policies. On the side of budget and planning, the annual audit began on March 30th and is currently underway, with auditors scheduled to present their findings at the May 12th, but possibly also it could move to the 19th meeting. That's still under discussions. I just thought I would update that from my report. The finance director, myself, and the manager are actively working on grant applications for the 2026 funding. And the 2026 property tax bylaw is expected to be brought forward to council in late May, early June. On the staffing side of things, the accounts payable position has been filled permanently as of February 24th, 2026. Our senior finance assistant has completed recertification to serve as the assessment review board clerk. The IT manager has completed leadership for safety excellence and women's training, and a couple other finance staff have also completed required privacy legislation and women's training. Utility rates are currently underway for March to April billing cycle. A contract has been secured for a new metering company, and residents can expect installation work to begin shortly. The assessment complaint deadline has passed, and we are currently reviewing and processing 10 assessment review board complaints. Property tax notices are scheduled to be sent out by June 15th. Business license renewals have been in full swing since April 1st, and we have already achieved 98% of the annual licensing revenue budget. To date, 55 of new business licenses have been issued, excluding sub-trades operating under prime contractors. Invoicing under new offsite levy bylaw has begun, and we are also processing increased seasonal activity such as sidewalk seating invoices and excavation-related deposits. On the Jasper wildfire response and recovery, we continue to participate in monthly HARP meetings. So that's the acronym replacing DRP meetings. To date, we have reconciled just over 30 million in wildfire-related expenses and are exploring additional funding options to support costs that are not eligible under the program. And we just under the communication side of things, we continue to encourage residents to enroll in pre-authorized payment plans to ensure consistent monthly payments, particularly as some banks are discontinuing municipal tax services, as some might have experienced. Mortgages would be paid out with insurance payouts, and then their mortgages wouldn't be offsetting or continuing the payments for those additional payments to the municipality. So it's important that the residents set up their accounts so that they have those pre-authorized payments coming through. And residents were notified of the upcoming water meter replacement program through their March utility bills. And paid parking has commenced as of May 1st. Local users are reminded to renew their permits through the Hotspot app. And I'm available for any questions on that report, but I can also go into the financials that are attached.
Go ahead, continue with that, and then we can cover everything in questions.
Sure, thank you. Sorry, I just have to find the right file. There we go. So I just prepared the 26 operational numbers as we will see the 2025 statements coming shortly. So I thought rather than see them twice in a couple of weeks, that we would just do the 26 right now and get the presentation from the auditors coming here shortly. On the side of revenue and expenses, you can see that each department is listed individually. Finance and administration, you can see we're quite low right now, but this, you have to consider that 21 million will be coming in shortly as taxation and requisitions being issued in June for July payments. Urban design and planning, you can see that they're quite high in the revenue side of things. This is because of 2.8 million of HAF funding already received and recognized under the revenue section. Jasper recovery, the revenue that will offset any of the expenses that we see over the year is only done at year end. So you won't see that change much over the coming months until the year end. Legislative and protective services, you can see they're quite low at the moment in their revenue, but consider that 1.8 million is in paid parking revenue. So we'll see that come up from May until October. On the operations side of things, most of this is from utilities. So summer, you'll see that they'll increase quite a bit. And community development will pick up over the summer as well as when we have grants come in. On the expense side of things, you can see that most are under right now. Finance and administration, the requisitions are still to occur. And the operations department is on par for where we are at 33% of the year. And if you hop over to the next page, there's a report on council and where council sits for expenses at the moment. And council is under expended at the moment at 25% of at 33% of the year. And as requested from council a few meetings ago, there's also a report on reserves and where they sit for year end. Just make a little comment on that. So you can see the beginning of the year. Financial stabilization reserve started at 1.6 million and will be sitting at 2.1, well, is sitting at 2.1 for 2025 year end. There is a gray cell in that, but in that area, just because 483,000 of it went in 25, but will come out in 26 for payments to debenture. On the side of utility operating reserve, it is sitting the same, so 1.2, just over $1.2 million. The annual general capital reserve started at $3.8 million and is sitting at $3.26 million at the year end. The utility capital reserve started at $2.86 million and is sitting at $3.8 million at year end. The housing reserve began at 322,000. And there's also a gray cell in here. This is because we will be bringing a request of decision from council on the insurance proceeds that we've received for the housing insurance. So there'll be a request coming next week for decision on the 19th of moving $876,185 to that reserve to hold until the rebuild starts on the Cabin Creek project. So that brings our reserve for a year end of 1.2 million. The fixed assets stayed at 149,000. The transportation and parking reserve started at 902,000 and ended the year at 1.2 million. And then the fleet reserve started at $827,000 and finished the year off at $1.5 million. Therefore, year end, we are seeing just under $15 million in reserves. And that's it for my report, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Melanchuk. Questions from councillors? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Director Malinchak. Thank you very much for the report on the reserves. Are these numbers confirmed by our auditors already, or will there be will these be updated when the auditors make their presentation to council for the year-end balances of 2025?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Melnick, there's a chance that there might be a slight adjustment, but they're quite consistent right now. Don't see many changes that could occur in this area, but there is still things going on, some movement, so there is a chance, yes.
Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Through you to Director Melanchuk. You spoke about banks cancelling their ties to municipal taxes. Is that a Jasper specific program or change, or is that something that's happening throughout the banking industry throughout Canada?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Waxer. I don't know what other banks do in other communities when it comes down to mortgages, but right now, Jasper does allow for mortgages to also pay the taxation through our system. So if the mortgage was paid off in full by the insurance proceeds, then there's a chance that the resident or taxpayer might not have a mortgage for a year, for instance, until they remortgage when their property is completely built. And then they could reinstate those payments through the bank process. And not all banks are doing that. There's not, it's not the same for every client. So there are some that might have to pay off their entire mortgage with their insurance proceeds and then continue on with their build. There are some that will hold on and retain their mortgage during the time being and will continue paying their mortgage bills. So if they are doing that, then I'm sure that they would still be making those payments as they've been set up already.
Thank you for that clarification. Sorry, I had one other question and it disappeared. Oh, underpaid parking, just to clarify for locals, that if they were registered in the Hotspot app in 2025, do they need to do something for 2026? Do they need to renew that process, or are they, does it just roll over from year to year? Just so that the public is aware.
Yes, thank you for that question. Very valid. Your Worship, through to Councillor Waxer. It's very important that everyone knows that their vehicle from 2025, if it was registered, will be automatically renewed and roll over. If, for instance, there was a new vehicle purchased, new registration put on to the vehicle, then that's when you would want to update it in the app. But yes, if you had that vehicle last year, it will roll over automatically.
Thank you for that.
I have two questions for you, Director Melanchuk. Firstly, just generally when people understand or don't understand finances, being in the black is good, being in the red is not so good. You've got all of the reserves, not only in red, but with a minus sign ahead of them. Can you just explain that from an accounting perspective so that people are not alarmed that we are many millions of dollars in the red?
Thank you. Yes, Your Worship. So these transfers from reserves are set up as a liability account. They're set to be used for future projects. So they are in the accounting world set up as a negative an amount. I saw this as I was getting a report ready, nearly changed it all over, and then ran out of time, so I didn't change them to black so that there wasn't the question. But no, this is not a bad case scenario. It's just how it comes out of our system for reporting.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation, not only for myself, but for others who might be misled by that. The other question I have, and again, just for clarification, if you go back to, it's page 36, it's the operating budget for the municipality, the first of your financial documents. Can you just confirm that of that 2026 budgeted amount for revenue for finance and administration, that $22.5 million amount, that includes the requisitions that we will ultimately be paying to the province and to Evergreens? And is that amount reflected in the expense of $11 million or very close to that?
Yes, Your Worship, you are correct. They are included in the revenue and are shown in the expenses of the finance and administration section.
Right. So what we show as revenue is money that we are collecting for other bodies and are bound to remit to them. It's not, in any sense, municipal money.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification as well. Other questions for Director Melnichuk? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you for the time again, Your Worship, and through you to Director Malinchak. We had a delegation, and we were talking about the rebuild of Pine, the home for our seniors, and an expansion. And unless I heard incorrectly, it was alluded that it would be a drain, or we're not receiving tax revenue. When you were mentioning about the operations department, specifically, I think you mentioned utilities, both Alpine and Pine would be paying the normal water, sewage, and so on that any other business or resident would based on their consumption. So really, if they did expand, we would be expanding the amount of revenue that we'd be receiving in a larger facility.
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Melnick. Yes, that's correct. If there's more units, more usage, yes.
Thank you. Just one of the points that in that discussion about being a bit of a not generating additional revenues for the municipality, it's actually a bit opposite because of the consumption-based system that we use for utilities.
Thank you all. If there are no further questions for Director Malinchuk, I would look for a motion that Council receive her report for information. Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.3, Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, 2S LGBTQI plus individuals and two-spirited people, also known as Red Dress Day. And there is a request for decision and a proclamation prepared. Mr. Given, does anybody wish to speak to the matter from administration, or is it self-evident from the RFD and we should proceed?
Mayor Ireland, I don't know that I would say it's self-evident from the RFD, but I would say that you certainly highlighted this in your opening remarks and the relevance of this day and the recognition of this day in your opening remarks to council. So I think the proclamation and your recognition of it probably does the majority of the work that's required there.
Thank you for that. Do any councillors wish to address the matter initially, or is there a council Councillor interested in making the motion, and then we can speak to the motion if anybody wishes to speak to it? Councillor Hall?
I would make this motion that Council proclaim May 5th, 2026, a local day of awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQI plus individuals, and Two-Spirit people, also known as Red Dress Day. I think this is really meaningful work. It's an opportunity to honor and remember missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people while continuing to advance our commitment to truth and reconciliation and building stronger relationships with Indigenous partners.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hall, does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Waxer?
Just having overheard conversations or read conversations, I just wanted to really highlight the part of the proclamation that talks about those groups facing disproportionate rates of discrimination, exclusion, and violence, including going missing or being murdered compared to their non-Indigenous counterparts. I think at times people have questioned why focus on this, but I think it is clear that there is a disproportionate rate of these types of activity, these types of discrimination and violence, and so I very strongly approve of going forward on this proclamation.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. I see no other councillors wishing to speak to the matter. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried, and I do therefore hereby proclaim May 5th as a local day of awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQI plus individuals, and Two-Spirited people. And I call on all citizens of Jasper, especially those not directly affected by this crisis, to stand in solidarity with Indigenous communities and Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQI plus individuals, and Two-Spirit people. That will then take us to agenda item 6.3. We have a couple of matters remaining, plus an in-camera session. I wonder if any councillors would prefer a break at this time. Okay, it looks like I'm getting a nod of assent for that. So I will call a short recess and we will reconvene at 3 p.m. for those who are watching online. All right, welcome back. We are back in session and we are at agenda item 6.4, Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation, Connaught Below Market Housing Loan Guarantee Bylaw. This is here, having gone through first and second reading, it then went to Parks Canada for certification, as is required under the establishment agreement. It is now back and we have certification in hand. So we are looking for third reading. If there is a councillor who is prepared to make a motion for third reading, we will do so. Councillor Roger.
The council read for the third time bylaw number 278, being a bylaw of the municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to authorize a loan guarantee for the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation.
Thank you for the motion for third reading, Councillor Roger. In the absence of any indication of speaking to the motion, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Agenda item 6.5, Jasper Water Services Bylaw 2026. That is here for first and second reading. CAO Given or Director Sanders, did you wish to speak to the matter at all?
Mayor Ireland, I don't know that I'll speak to any of the technical details of the document or the content. I will just say that it was first presented at committee, where committee had a number of questions, comments, and suggestions for revisions. Since that time, administration reviewed the bylaw, brought it back to committee, where it was discussed last week. Administration highlighted the changes that we had made in response to the previous discussion at committee of the whole, and answered some additional questions. And at that time, committee of the whole recommended that it come forward to council for first and second reading.
Thank you for that, CAO Given. Councillors, if there are no remaining questions regarding the content of the bylaw or the format, I guess, for that matter, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion for a first reading? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would make the motion to council read for the first time Bylaw 279, being a bylaw of the municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to provide for the regulation of water services.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Melnick. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And is there a councillor prepared to make a motion for second reading? Councillor Waxer.
That council read for the second time bylaw number 279, being a bylaw of the municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to provide for the regulation of water services.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Does anyone wish to speak to that motion? Seeing no hands, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 7, notices of motion, of which there are none. So we can move to agenda item 8, councillor reports. Are there reports from councillors? Councillor Melnick, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to report that on Wednesday, the 22nd of April, I attended the presentation called From Disaster to Possibility here in the Quorum Room, as did a number of other councillors. As well, the next day on April 23rd, I attended the Community Futures West Yellowhead board meeting via Zoom, because in the afternoon we had an emergency management advisory committee session with Parks Canada and our protective services folks as they were preparing for the meeting, or sorry, the I believe 2-day exercise in emergency management that we do every year.
Thank you for that. Other reports? Councillor Waxer?
Yes, yesterday I attended the FCSS AA board meeting in Edmonton and attempted to attend the Recovery Advisory Committee via Teams on the journey home, but got disconnected partway through. And last week attended the legislative committee for the first time on Monday.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. On Monday, I was also in attendance of the Legislative Committee meeting, the first one of this term. Yesterday, I was in attendance at the Recovery Advisory Committee meeting, and this morning we had an intergovernmental meeting with all of Council.
Go ahead, Councillor Waxer.
I apologize. We also had the meeting on Wednesday in the morning with the Goodstone leadership meeting, which was very productive.
Thank you for that. And I can report going back a little further. April 16th, I attended a meeting of the Jasper Community Team Society. On the 17th, I attended during Pride Week a coffee hosted by Councillor Hall with MLA Irwin in attendance. On the 22nd in this room, I attended a session called Disaster to Possibility by the Resilience Institute. Really interesting information made available. I joined, as Councillor Melnick said, the emergency management exercise on April 23rd. April 25th, I spoke at the Canadian Rockies Half Marathon, exceptionally well attended, despite the fact that a few runners from Valemont and West couldn't make it in, but otherwise a really terrific day in the Canadian Rockies to celebrate with a running race in various distances. As Councillor Waxer indicated, on the 29th, we had a meeting with the leadership of Goodstoney First Nation. On the evening of April 29th, I attended the wildfire presentation. There were significant reports. FP Innovations, who prepared a post-fire assessment of how the fire actually spread within the community, presented. That was really interesting information. We also received presentations from the municipality through both Director Nadon and Fire Chief Conte, and various people from Parks Canada presented. And one of the takeaways is that the entire outlook of Fire Smart has changed somewhat, rather than focusing as much on vegetation management. Now there are 7 different elements, all of which are combined and equally important. And the one to really emphasize is, I think, the importance of preparing your own property and fire smarting that property. The other ones, of course, still play a role as well, but they're presenting it as a holistic 7-pronged approach to mitigation. April 30th, I met for an hour or so with our MLA, Minister Long, and toured him around to show him some of the progress that is underway with our recovery. May 1st, I was invited to speak to the Jasper Ladies Amazing Race. So a large number of ladies, all with some connection to Jasper, having worked here 40 or 50 years ago. Last year, they came up with the notion to get together again in Jasper to support the community through its recovery. And they did that again this year, and really a wonderful opportunity for community building. Uplift is underway now for its 5th year. I attended the opening ceremony here in this room and connected with JAG on May 1st. And there was a terrific event at the Legion on Saturday night, community-minded event with DJs and a rapper and music, and really, really well attended. Again, really uplifting for the entire community. And as you saw, work is underway, particularly over at the interim industrial site and the CCANs. If you haven't seen them, worth going for a look. And that is my report. Agenda item 9, upcoming events. We have a number of them. We are in, I think, Emergency Preparedness Week, so always a good time to remind people to think about everything related both to safety, and unfortunately, people should be thinking also again of 72-hour kits, grab-and-go kits, and their own preparations for evacuation and protecting their own properties. Not on the list, but there is the event this evening at the multipurpose hall, CBC still standing. Are there any other upcoming events not on the list that councillors think ought to be brought to the attention of council generally? If not, we have an intergovernmental matter to move in camera, and I understand that there may be another matter to be raised by administration with respect to sort of intergovernmental and land, but again, falling under the parameters of in-camera discussion. So I would look for a motion that council move in camera at 3:13 p.m. Councillor Waxer, thank you for that motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. We will move in camera. I can assure the public watching live that when we revert to open session, it will be for purposes of passing a motion to adjourn. There will be no further business arising from the in-camera discussion. So for those who have invested the time to watch, you can safely exit now, and those who are watching on YouTube, you will never know the difference. And we are now moving in camera. We are back, having had a single motion in camera, that being to revert to open session, which we did within the last minute. We are back in open session, and I would invite a councillor to make a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hall, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you all for watching our proceedings today.